Have you ever looked at a college football team and thought, how is this even fair? Some wide receiver rooms are so stacked that even their bench receivers could be dominating in the NFL. This is exactly what many of us have begun to realize from watching the likes of 2019 LSU and 2021 Ohio State. So today we're going to be diving deep into the most loaded, explosive, and unstoppable wide receiver groups in college football history. And boy do we have receipts, so let's get into it. First up, let's start with 2021 Ohio State, who gets the most buzz as they're named the NFL Factory. And this wide receiver room definitely deserves to get its credit as it had 5 future NFL wide receiver ones. Literally, I'm not even joking. Ohio State's 2021 receiver room had 5 future NFL first-round picks. I mean, you're stacked when you have Marvin Harrison Jr. and Emeka Egbuka coming off the bench. And the two old guys in the wide receiver room were Chris Olave and Garrett Wilson, who would both go for over 900 receiving yards in the season and be selected 11th and 10th overall in the 2022 NFL Draft. However, the true star of this wide receiver room was actually Jackson Smith-Njigba, who had 95 catches for 1,606 receiving yards and 9 touchdowns. And to go along with this, JSN had 347 receiving yards in the Rose Bowl, which is the most ever in a bowl game. It's hard to believe that this team didn't make the playoffs, but if we're talking talent, this might be the most NFL-ready wide receiver room that was ever assembled. However, they're not the only team in contention, as we have the 2019 Alabama wide receiver room, who was known as the track meet. As 2019 Alabama had pure speed, as the Crimson Tide had 4 receivers who could torch any defense, and they made it all to the league. And 2019 Alabama also had 4 future NFL first-round picks in their wide receiver room, and the true star was Jeudy, who had 77 catches for 1,163 receiving yards and 10 touchdowns as he won the Biletnikoff Award. However, the talent didn't end there, as they also had Henry Ruggs III, who had 700 receiving yards and 7 touchdowns and would be picked 12th overall in the 2020 NFL Draft. He didn't pan out, but this next receiver definitely did, as they DeVonta Smith, who had 68 catches for 1,256 receiving yards and 14 touchdowns. Oh, and did I forget to mention that in the next season, he would go on to become the Heisman winner? Yes, he won the Heisman Trophy as a receiver in 2020 with 117 catches for 1,856 receiving yards and 23 touchdowns. And this allowed Smith to be picked 10th overall in the 2021 NFL Draft by the Eagles, where he's been dominant in the NFL. And despite all this talent, the highest drafted receiver was actually Jaylen Waddle, who was the wide receiver 4 in 2019. And he had true speed at Alabama, going on to be picked 6th overall in the 2021 NFL Draft by the Miami Dolphins. And legit, if you line them all up in a 4x1 relay, it's over. Tua had video game numbers, and every wide receiver could take a slant 80 yards in this wide receiver room. However, the talent doesn't end there, as you can't talk about wide receiver rooms without bringing in the national champs, 2019 LSU, who was known as the record breakers. And legit, this offense didn't just win, they literally broke football, as they helped Joe Burrow go from a starter in 2018 who only threw for 16 touchdowns to having a record-breaking season in 2019, where he threw for 5,671 passing yards and 60 touchdowns as he won the Heisman Trophy and had the greatest college football quarterback season ever. And this was all due to his 2 main weapons, Chase and Justin Jefferson. And this was insane, as Chase was just a young receiver who had 84 catches for 1,780 receiving yards and 20 touchdowns. And even despite sitting out, he'd still be picked 5th overall in the 2021 NFL Draft by the Cincinnati Bengals. And since entering the NFL, he's been a top 3 receiver in the entire league, as he won the NFL Offensive Rookie of the Year in 2021 and then was recently set the records, winning the 2024 NFL Offensive Player of the Year. But you can't talk about him without talking about Justin Jefferson, who in the season had 111 catches for 1,540 receiving yards and 18 touchdowns. And he would go on to be picked 22nd overall in the 2020 NFL Draft by the Minnesota Vikings. And no joke, through his first 5 seasons in the NFL at the Vikings, he's been the best receiver in NFL history, as he's racked up over 7,000 receiving yards and 40 touchdowns. But the talent doesn't end there, as they also had Terrence Marshall Jr., who racked up 671 receiving yards and 13 touchdowns as a wide receiver 3. He would go on to be picked in the 2nd round of the 2021 NFL Draft by the Carolina Panthers, where he has been underwhelming in the league but has flash potential. I mean, come on, they scored 726 points in a single season, which is the most in SEC history. Oh yeah, and to go along with that, both Justin Jefferson and Ja'Marr Chase are wide receiver 1A and 1B in the NFL for the next 10 years. And this was all good, but if you want a sneakily loaded wide receiver room, then you have to look no farther than 2016 Ole Miss. These dudes looked like they belonged in the WWE, as they were known as the Physical Freaks. I mean, they had AJ Brown and DK Metcalf, enough said. Okay, but actually being serious, AJ Brown was flat out dominant in college. He racked up over 2,500 receiving yards and 17 touchdowns in his last 2 seasons and somehow slipped to the 2nd round of the NFL Draft. Since then, though, through his first 6 seasons in the NFL, he's been a top 5 receiver in the entire league, racking up over 7,000 receiving yards and 49 touchdowns in his career. And to go along with this, 2016 Ole Miss had DK Metcalf, who was an absolute beast. He didn't get to play in many games this season due to injury, but still racked up 7 touchdowns. And following his dominance with the Rebels, he'd be picked in the 2nd round of the 2019 NFL Draft by the Seahawks. And through his first 6 years in the NFL with the Seahawks, he was quietly one of the best receivers in the entire league, racking up over 6,000 receiving yards and 48 touchdowns in his career. And to go along with all of this, 2016 Ole Miss had 2 dominant tight ends in Dawson Knox and Evan Ingram, who have both become Pro Bowlers in the NFL. And finally, 2019 USC might be the most underrated wide receiver room on this list, but but the NFL proves otherwise, as they had Michael Pittman Jr., Amon-Ra St. and Drake London. All of these players have been truly dominant in the NFL with their respective teams becoming Pro Bowlers. 2019 USC was never a national title contender, but this room quietly put 3 NFL wide receivers on the field all at once. We've seen them all, but we now must reach a verdict and crown the GOAT. Let me know down in the comments who you think the greatest college football wide receiver room of all time is, but just looking at the facts, it has to be 2019 LSU. They had the best college football production, immediate NFL dominance, and even powered Joe Burrow's historic Heisman year. LSU wasn't just great, they were legendary, but I will say this, 2019 Alabama is the only room that might match their pure talent ceiling.